the webinar is called Unit Planning, Aligning with PTKLF and DRDP for Effective Teaching. My name is Daniel. I'm part of the Educator Success team. And right here is the email for our wonderful help desk, which is help@learning-genie.com. If you ever have any questions, if you ever need any assistance with your account, they are really great. They'll be more than happy to help you. And they also speak Spanish. We have people that speak Spanish there. If you have any questions in Spanish, they'll be more than happy to assist you. All right. So the agenda for today, we're going to be looking at Learning Genie's reflective planning. Just a quick overview. We're going to be seeing the children's interests, how we can align with PTKLF and DRDP, how we can add observations, and how we can rate those observations. So it's going to be sort of a long webinar. It's a lot to cover, but we're gonna go fast through those topics, and we'll try to keep it as much fun as we can. All right, so key changes in the new PTKLF. In case you're not really familiar with it, in case you're trying to get the hang of it, since this is going to be mandatory starting the next school year, so 25, 26, this is going to be really big. We're going to need to be able to understand it and put it into practice. So really quick, of course, the biggest thing from the CAPLF, the California Preschool Learning Foundations, they changed from that to this one, which is the Preschool Transitional Kindergarten Learning Foundations. We're going to have of course, it has the integration of the transitional kindergarten to it right here, the TKPs. Then the new domain, they integrated approaches to learning. Of course, if you use DRDP, you might already be familiar with it. Then the age labels for preschool, for early foundation, it's from 3 years to 4.5. And then for TK, later foundation from 4 to 5.5 years old. Then they've added new foundations. They've added about 45 new foundations across domains like language development, science, and math. And they've improved the alignment with kindergarten. So they have a stronger alignment with the Common Core standards for a smoother transitions once they go from TK to K. I have a question in the chat. How can I put it in Spanish, please? I don't know if we can have the automatic translation. I think I'm going to say this in Spanish really quick. Señorita Sonia Ortiz Hernández, creo que debe de tener un botón para poder poner para que lo traduzca de manera automática a español. Si no, puse en el chat un link para un webinar que es igual en español, ¿vale? Okay, sorry, thank you. And so for the overview of the 9 domains, really quick, we're going to have in the new PTKLF approaches to learning, social emotional development, language and literacy, math, science, physical development, health, history, social science, and visual and performing arts. In language and literacy, of course, we also have ELD for English language development. And we can go to the live webinar. Now, I'm going to go to Learning Genie and show the tools that we're going to be using. Of course, if you don't have these tools, I'm going to be sharing a link in the chat. So we're going to be looking at the unit planner from Learning Genie. So if you do not have that tool, if you'd like to request more information or being able to pilot it on your account, just please go into that link that I put in the chat, fill out the form, and we'll be more than happy to turn it on for you on your account so you can test it out. And I think you're going to love it, or you're going to see it in just a second if you're not familiar with it. So let's jump right in. But before I go into the unit planner, there's a couple of things that I wanted to mention. First, I was talking about the reflective planning in the agenda. I'm going to go to my weekly planning, and I just want to show you a tool that we have right here on Learning Genie. So when you're planning for a week on Learning Genie, for example, you're going to have on the left the class overview where you can see in your specific site. For example, for me, I'm going to select the Learning Genie Academy and actually Carlsbad Academy and my preschool one classroom. I can see how I'm doing for the assessment and what observations I need to do, what measures need rating, and so on and so on. We're going to see it right here. So we have the class overview. I can select the specific assessment. Right now we're doing spring 2025, and I can see the total observation notes that I've done in my classroom. I can see the average notes per measure. I see I am at 1.4. Maybe I need to have 2 observations per measure, so I need to pump it up a little. Then observation progress, I've only observed 34.2%. Maybe if my assessment is ending in 2 months, I need to step it up a bit with this. The rating progress, how many of those measures I've actually rated, I've only rated 25.5%. Um, I'm also going to see here the top 10 measures that need observation. Um, for example, these 10 measures I have not observed. And if I hover over them, for example, LLD4, I can see exactly which children I need to observe these measures for. All right. And another cool thing that I wanted to show you, we're going to see an overview right here of the domain score statistics. And right here, the top 10 interest areas that my students have shown. So in my classroom, I can see, for example, that 14 of my children like plants, 13 of them like dogs, 7 of them are into outdoor activities, for example, or music, art, ice skating, and so on and so on. Now, this is something that I wanted to show you because we're going to be creating a unit with the unit planner, which basically uses AI to help us create a unit on any theme we want. And what we're going to do here is that we're going to take the children's interests and we're going to go into the unit planner and create something that is super engaging for them and to have them really happy in the classroom and engaged throughout the whole week. For example, if we do a unit for a week, to have them really engaged. So if you're not familiar with Learning Genie's interest for the children, I'm going to show you really quick how you can actually add them. So I'm going to go back to my menu and I'm going to go back to home. I guess you're all familiar with this section. I'm just going to click on my preschool classroom. I'm going to collapse this so I have a little bit more space. And in my classroom, you're going to see a button right here that says interest view. If I click on it, I'm going to be able to see my entire classroom and all their interests. Right here, I can go ahead and add anything I want for them. All right, so that I can have that information whenever I'm planning, whenever I'm creating a unit for them. All right, so I can see, for example, anteater, and the anteater likes bees, dogs, plants. He likes to run, ice skating. He likes music, outdoor activities, and swimming. If I have anything more to add, I can go ahead and put rollerblading, for example, and just add that to the child's interests. All right. I can also batch add interest for all the children if I have something in specific, something like, I don't know, I can add these children and maybe I can just add something like maybe they really like elephants, for example. So I can go ahead and add that to all these children and just save it and they will have it right here in their interests. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. We can just go into the classroom. We can go to interest view and make sure to add those right here so that when I go to the unit planner, I can plan for those specific interests. So I'm going to go to that tool again. It could be a little bit different in your account if you do not have this curriculum section, the unit planner. You can click the link that I put in the chat and you can fill out the form and we can add this for you so you can pilot it on your account. Okay. So really quick, I have a question in the chat. I see that we currently group the children by observed or unobserved measures, but can we do it the other way? Meaning, can we group the measures by observed or unobserved children? If you'd like, we can stay till the end so we can go over that question, Ms. B, if that's okay. All right, so I'm gonna go to the unit planner really quick. And right here, if you're not familiar with it, what we have right here is all the units that I've created, and I can go ahead and create a new one. So basically, really quick, what we're trying to do with this is to help you save time, to help you save a lot of time in planning. We know that it can take from 2 hours all the way to like 20 hours a week to create the lesson plans that you need to plan out your entire week or your entire month for the lessons that you're going to be teaching, that you're going to be implementing in the classroom. What we're trying to do with this tool is save you a lot of time um, on planning, okay? And how we can do it is by just adding a theme, adding a quick description, and the tool is going to help us create whatever we need for our children. So the reason I was mentioning the interest view is that we can actually use a child-led approach right here on Learning Genie. So for example, if I know that my children like outdoor activities, that they really like dogs, they really like plants, we can do units based on that. So I would actually like if you could help me participate on this in the chat uh, to sort of mimic what we would do in the classroom. If you can give me some of your interests in the chat so that we can create a unit based on what, for example, the children would like. So if you'd like to Oh, thank you. Bugs. We can do something about bugs, definitely. Shapes. Thank you, Miss Dallas. Butterflies, pets, bald eagles, plants. That's perfect. Gymnastics, insects. All right. Trains. All right. That's perfect. Thank you. All right. Building. All right. All right. Thank you so much. We're gonna do, um, how about I see shapes in the chat. So we're gonna do something about shapes. Um, And for example, I saw in the interest that my children really like outdoors. So I can do shapes in nature, for example, something like that. And then I can, in the unit description, we can ask any additional questions with like, um, so for example, I saw in the chat bugs. We can include bugs, insects. For example, what shapes do bugs have? We can ask any guiding questions for the unit. For example, maybe how do uh, insects sleep? Maybe another one, what do insects eat? Anything like that. You can add those specific questions. And also, for example, I can tell the system, okay, and I have um, Play-Doh in my classroom, for example, in my classroom, and popsicle sticks, anything like that that I can use. If I have any materials in my classroom, I can just tell Learning Genie what I have, and it's going to help me implement that in the specific unit. All right. Since we're talking about PTKLF, um, I'm going to select, for example, TK. If I have a TK classroom, or actually, I'm going to do this for my preschool classroom, for example, for preschool. And maybe I want to talk about this for 2 weeks. You can always up the number of weeks. I'm going to leave it at 2. And under California, of course, I'm going to select the new PTKLF. And you can select the domains that we're going to be using. You can do it right here where it says specific standards. And if you have those specific standards like we were looking at, maybe I needed to teach for LLD4, something like that. Maybe I need a specific measure that I haven't observed. I can implement it here. If I just want to do it a little bit more general, I can always select the auto-adapted um, portion right here, and I can select the specific domains I want. So since we're going to be talking about bugs, for example, I can select science, and maybe I can select, for example, approaches to learning. or since we're going to do it outside, for example, physical development, we're going to be talking about shapes, we can include math in there. All right. So we can, right, just like that, select the specific domains we want to use, and Learning Genie is going to help us choose the measures that are more appropriate for these specific lessons. All right. Also, we can create a localized curriculum. If we want to do it, for example, in this one, since we're talking about insects, it's pretty cool that we can localize it to the specific area we're in. And it's going to help us talk about specifically the insects, for example, in that area. If we're talking about animals of the sea, for example, or the weather or anything like that, it's going to help us create it around the specific area we're at. Also, this can be turned off. I'm just going to turn it off so we do it a little bit more general for this one. Um, but yeah, and I'm going to click generate, and I'm going to let Learning Genie do its thing, start working on it, and it's going to help me create an entire unit around what we just did. I thank you everyone for helping me out in the chat to create this. So that is sort of what the child approach would look like, but let me know if you have any suggestions, any way you'd like to actually implement it in the classroom, or what you have seen that works on your classroom when you do any activity like that, when you get the children involved in participating with the subjects that we're going to be teaching in the classroom. All right, so it has helped me create the unit. It's called Shapes in Nature, and it's also going to give me a nice AI generated image, as you can see. And we're going to go through this really quick. So the unit overview, we're going to be seeing that the children will explore the world of insects and the shapes that can be found in nature. They will investigate various insects, understand their characteristics, and learn about their basic needs and behaviors, such as eating and sleeping. So that's pretty cool. We're going to see the unit trajectory right here. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing for the sake of time, but we're going to see the related concepts that the children are going to explore. For example, children will explore concepts related to shapes in nature, specifically focusing on shapes of insects' bodies. They will learn about the different parts of insects, such as wings, legs, and antennae. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, sorry, and how these parts come together to form various shapes. All right, we're going to see what skills that the children will practice and develop. As a teacher, what principles, practices, strategies, and or approaches will the teacher use? How will children's social emotional development be guided and supported? Very important. For example, children's social emotional development will be supported by encouraging curiosity, teamwork, and respect for living things. And what other significant components or considerations are included in the unit? The concepts, we're going to see shapes in nature, characteristics of insects, insect behaviors and needs, and some of the guiding questions, which is sort of what we were inputting here in the description. So what shapes can you find in the bodies of insects? How do different insects use their body parts to move and eat? Where do insects live? And so on and so on. Now, you don't have to stick specifically with what Learning Genie gave you. If you'd like to remove anything, you can. If you'd like to add any additional guiding questions, you can as well. Right here, start typing it in. Um, and that goes for everything. For the unit overview, the unit trajectory, you can make any additional changes. And then then we can go to the next portion. But really quick, before I go into the next one, you can always update right here and regenerate if you have any additional adaptation ideas. So you don't have to go in and type everything. Uh, you can actually do it from here, okay? Okay, so right now, if I'm satisfied with it, I can hit next. And Learning Genie is always going to give me suggestions. For example, I wanted this to be for 2 weeks, and Learning Genie is telling me, okay, so the number of weeks selected for this unit may not fully align with its content scope or learning objectives. So to ensure balanced pacing and effective learning, we recommend adjusting the duration as follows. So basically, it's telling me 2 weeks might be a little bit too much. We can do it just 1 week. and that would be sufficient to cover the content without overwhelming the children, ensuring effective engagement and understanding. So I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna accept the recommendation that Learning Genie just gave me, and we're gonna take it down to 1 week. So really quick, we created first the unit foundations where you helped me select the topic. Right now we're in the second step, the weekly theme and overview. So we took it down to only 1 week, and we're gonna see the theme. It's gonna be shapes in nature, discovering insects, and the overview right here. So the children will explore the fascinating world of insects. If I have any books at school that I want to use, I can go ahead and add them here. If I don't, it's okay. Learning Genie is gonna provide the books for me, and we'll see that in just a second. And as I was mentioning, so we selected the domains, and Learning Genie is going to give me the most appropriate measures for these specific lessons. So we took three from math, two from physical development, and three from science. So if I'm happy with this, again, I can confirm it next. If I want to change the number of lessons per week, I can as well, or any additional changes here. All right. I always like to mention because it's important to know that you don't have to stick specifically with what Learning Genie is giving you, okay? So I'm gonna confirm and go next. And now we're at the third part of the process. So it's actually generating everything for me. Um, it's breaking down the week into the 5 lessons that I selected. And I'm gonna have those 5 lesson plans right here. I'm just gonna remove that. Again, what we're looking at is week 1, shapes in nature, the theme, the overview, the standards that I select that Learning Genie selected for me based on the domains that I selected. And it's going to give me lessons for small and large groups. We're going to have those 5 lessons, and I can click into any of them to make any additional changes if I'd like to. I can add or remove any specific measures, and I can just take a look at the overview for this lesson. For example, this one is going to begin the lesson by reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar, which maybe a lot of you are familiar with that book, to introduce children to insects and their shapes. Engage the children in a discussion about the different shapes they notice in the story, and so on and so on. So if I'm happy with this lesson, I can confirm it and let Learning Genie generate all the details for that lesson plan. And this is the best part. This is what we came for. So with just a few clicks, after we select the theme, um, it's gonna start generating the actual lesson plan for each of the 5 days of the week that we selected. And this might take a minute. I'm just gonna let Learning Genie finish, and we're gonna take it from the top. In the meantime, if you have any questions, let me know in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to help you. All right, just a couple seconds more. And there we go. All right, perfect. So Learning Genie completed my lesson, and I'm gonna go through all the sections of the lesson plan so you can see what this is all about. All right, so for week 1, lesson 1, insect shapes, this is my lesson plan. Again, it's generated a nice image. This is pretty cool. I like it because you can identify your lessons really quick with the image as well, and you don't have to go online looking for any additional images or anything like that. So insect shapes. This one's going to be for my preschool classroom. It's going to be for preschool. Also, this one is using these 3 foundations, Math 4.1, PD 1.8, and Science 3.1. It's going to tell me here it's going to take you about 20 minutes to prepare for this lesson, and the actual activity duration is going to be about 20 minutes. Now, again, everything can be modified on Learning Genie. If maybe it takes me a little bit more, I can let Learning Genie know. If I want this to be a little longer, I can adjust it. And once I adjust it, it's going to start regenerating again so that it adapts specifically to the activity duration we selected, okay? Objectives. For this specific lesson plan, the children are going to explore the shapes found in insects, such as circles, ovals, and triangles, through a hands-on activity with Play-Doh. Um, this is very important. This is what I told Learning Genie. Okay, so in my classroom, I have Play-Doh, I have popsicle sticks, so it's actually integrating them, as you can see, and it's helping me plan really quick. They will develop their fine motor skills by manipulating the Play-Doh and shape cutters and learn to identify and describe different shapes. Additionally, they will gain an understanding of the basic characteristics and behaviors of insects. In the materials, it's gonna request the Very Hungry Caterpillar book. Now, very important. On Learning Genie, we cannot provide the book. However, since it's including it in the materials, what Learning Genie is doing is that Learning Genie is adding a video with a read aloud. So you don't actually need to have the book. As we saw earlier, you can input books that you might have in your school, in your classroom. But if you don't have it, Learning Genie is going to suggest a book, like right here, and Learning Genie is actually going to give us a read aloud. So it looks sort of like this, something like this.
The
And for every single book that we get on the lesson plans, we're gonna have the video that we can just play to the children, and we can have the read aloud in the classroom. Okay, it's integrating the specific materials that I requested, the Play-Doh, the popsicle sticks, and so on. It's gonna give me DLL vocabulary and phrases, the specific shapes that we're gonna be looking at, for example, circle, oval, triangle, insect, and it's going to give me all the implementation steps to actually conduct this lesson in my classroom. So from the very beginning, it's going to tell me to gather the children in a small group, introduce the lesson by showing them the book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, and so on and so on. What questions I can ask, for example, what shapes do you see in the caterpillar's body? Can you find a circle or an oval in the picture? And so on and so on. So all the implementation steps on how to conduct the lesson in my classroom. And right here, very important. This is where I want to make a little bit of a pause, because we were talking about the new PTKLF. So how we can actually implement the new PTKLF in our classrooms. So if there's, for example, not a coach available at our school, anything like that, where we're trying to implement these new foundations. If we're not really familiar with them, this is how Learning Genie is supporting that process of learning and exploring, experimenting the way, however you want to see it, the new PTKLF. All right, so it's giving me teaching tips for standards. So basically, it's taking the three measures that we're looking at: Math 4.1, Physical Development 1.8, and Science 3.1, and it's giving me tips on how I can implement them during my lesson. All right, so Math 4.1, for example, is identifying two-dimensional shapes, and it's telling me, so as you read The Very Hungry Caterpillar, pause and point to shapes in the illustrations, encouraging children, encouraging children to call out the shape names. And also, during the Play-Doh activity, ask, can you find the circle in the caterpillar's body, to reinforce shape identification and recognition? And it's going to be the same for all of these. For example, Science 3.1, Characteristics of Living Things. We're going to see a teaching tip for that one, is show insect pictures and describe the body parts, then have children point and name the parts while creating their Play-Doh models. So um, they're tailored to every specific lesson plan that we create. So as you can see then, for this one, we selected math, PD, and science. And for this specific lesson plan, it chose math 4.1, PD 1.8, science 3.1, and I'm getting those teaching tips for those specific foundations. And the teaching tips are based on the specific lesson plan with the materials we're using, with the book we're using, and overall with the whole activity. So this is pretty cool. This is really interesting. So you can actually start implementing the PTKLF in your classroom and making sure that you're doing it a that you're going through the measures correctly. All right, through the foundations. All right. So next, we also have typical behaviors and observation tips. Um, so if you're using DRDP, if you're doing the DRDP assessment in your classroom, right here we have the mapping. So if I click on PTKLF, we're going to see those three foundations we were looking at. And if I click on DRDP, I'm going to see the three DRDP measures that align with the PTKLF. So we have, for example, cognition 7, shapes, 11, knowledge of the natural world, and PD health, fine motor manipulative skills. And right here is going to help me, it's going to support me so that I can do my observations for this lesson in my portfolio. So for example, for shapes, it's going to help me understand what to observe. So if the child uses a shape cutter to press into the Play-Doh and excitedly exclaims circle while pointing to the round shape they made, then I know for sure they're going through this specific measure from the RDP, which is shapes. All right, so that's the typical behaviors and observation tips. So it's helping you, it's Learning Genie supporting you through the assessment as well. Then universal design for differentiated learning. Um, Learning Genie uses UDL principles when creating these lessons. So it's giving you like sort of like tips again, but how to support if you have IEP or IFSP children in your classroom. So for example, that you can offer clear step-by-step instructions using simple language and break down tasks into smaller parts, such as selecting pre-shaped models and attaching popsicle sticks, so you can actually support these children in your classroom. And also, if you have English language learners, also it's going to help you how to support those children in the classroom. And culturally and linguistically responsive practices, how to integrate cultural elements, use multilingual labels and signs, and use culturally diverse visual aids. Lastly, I know it's a lot of information. Lastly, at-home activities so that the parents can help us support the children's language, the children's development at home. We can share these activities with them. They're going to be able to support the children, and pretty cool. They can actually take photos of the activities, share them with us, and then we can use that as an observation. It's gonna look like a draft on our portfolio, and we can actually use those photos and that information for an observation that we can use in our portfolio. All right, so I know it's a lot of information, but the overview is that with um, just a couple clicks of the children's interest, for example, we can create a complete 1 week unit with 5 lessons so they can understand a little bit more about, in this example, the shapes um, in nature. All right, it's going to give us books, all the materials we need, the implementation steps, the teaching tips for the new PTKLF for the foundations, and typical behaviors and observation tips so we can go ahead and complete our assessment. All right. Are there any questions up to this point? What I'm going to do right now is just jump into the portfolio, see how we can actually implement this in our portfolio, and that will be the webinar. All right. Really quick. In the meantime, if you don't have any questions, or if you do, please drop them in the chat. And I'm going to put in the chat again the link. So if you don't have the unit planner, if you'd like to test it out on your account, I see from Ms. Hernandez, this is pretty nice. Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. Please feel free to fill out the form. So we'll be more than happy to put this in your account so you can pilot it, you can use it, you can create as many lesson plans as you'd like, and you can have them there forever to use them in your classroom. All right, so once this is done, we can implement it in the classroom. How we do it is that we can batch generate, for example, so that we can generate all the lessons that we have, and then we only need to put it in our classroom. Now, for the sake of time, because I know we're running out of time, I see in the chat, make one unit on seasons. Actually, I don't think we have enough time, but I'm gonna have another webinar tomorrow actually, and it's gonna be pretty cool actually. Let me put the link in the chat right here. Right now, we were looking at how to create a complete unit. So we created a unit, we saw lesson one, but for example, we can see lesson two as well. I can confirm it. It's gonna start generating lesson two. It's gonna then generate lesson three, four, five, all the lessons for the unit. I'm also going to give a webinar tomorrow called AA Lesson Assistant, your coaching companion for PTKLF. And what we're going to see in that one is this same thing, but uh, using only a specific lesson plan. Instead of a complete unit, we can create specific lesson plans. So if you'd like to join that webinar, you can register right here. I'm going to put it in the chat. You can register right here. It's in the chat. A lesson assistant, where we can create a little bit more lessons. Ms. Pallavicini, maybe we can go through that tomorrow and create a lesson on the seasons. All right. So once Learning Genie finishes creating and generating all my lesson plans, what we can do is, let me close this. I'm going to go back. I see in the chat, is the same time. Yes, it's going to be at the same time tomorrow. Um, However, if you cannot attend, please feel free to register. What I'm going to do is send the recording to everyone that registered, even if you cannot attend, okay? So you can actually go through the webinar at your own time. And yeah, and all right, so when I finish my unit plan, I'm going to see it right here in my library of unit plans. And what I can do is implement them in my classroom. For example, I have, let me see, my completed ones. I have one on exercise for preschool. I like that image. I can go ahead and add the unit to my weekly plan. And right here, just a couple clicks, I can add it to my classroom, preschool one, confirm. And right here, I can go ahead and make any necessary adjustments and submit it to my classroom. Now, really quick, because I know we're running out of time. Now, once that has been added to my classroom, when I go into my classroom each day of the week for those 5 lessons, I'm going to see draft notes right here that I can use to add observations. If you're not familiar with it, this is what it looks like. I can look at, for example, past and completed drafts. This is what the drafts are going to look like. It's going to say, this note was created from applying a pre-made lesson plan. Please add your own observations. And I'm going to see the lesson. For example, this one talks about safety role play, but since we just did we just created one, it's going to be, for example, for next week about insects. This is what I'm going to look at next week. Right here is going to say uh, insect shapes or bugs in nature. I don't know, anything like that. The lessons that we were just creating, and it's going to have the measures that had tagged. They're going to be right here so that I can go in and complete my assessment. So for example, for this one, for safety role play, what I can do is edit. I had all of these children tagged for that specific lesson. So they're going to be tagged here, and I can just erase this and add my own description of the observation note. So for example, I had this one prepared already. Children actively practice safety rules like walking and taking turns during play. They showed kindness by comforting a sad peer and cooperated in shared activities. So I have my observation, I have all my tag children. This is the lesson that I used, and the lesson plan that I used, I have my measures tag. If I have any pictures that I took, I can upload them here, or I can take any pictures, record any video, and I can just go in and save it. And I'm gonna have it here in my observation notes. Since it was a past note, it was marked for March 7th. It's gonna put it right here on March 7th. So I have my observation. with the lesson that I created, and that's it. Next week, of course, we're going to see the ones from insects, and we're going to have observations based on those lesson plans for insect shapes. And that's how it works. That's how you can use the unit planner on Learning Genie. And lastly, of course, after adding the observation, if you're started to rate your measures, you can click on any of them. You can add the specific rating measure, the specific rating for this measure, save it, and you should see it rated right here and in teal. All right, if you want to go all the way up, you can go to rate all, and you can have a complete overview of how your children are doing in the assessment. And for anyone that you already observed, like these ones, the ones that have the little circle, the little blue circle, are measures that I have already observed. So I can go in and click and just add the specific rating that I need for that specific measure. If they're grayed out, that means I have not actually observed that measure. For example, LLD7, I have not observed it, so it's not allowing me to rate that measure. And I need to go in and create an observation for that specific measure. All right, sorry for taking more of your time. I want to be mindful of your time. And again, if you have any, if you'd like to test out the unit planner, you can. You can go in and fill out the form, and we'll be more than happy to help you pilot it.